There you go.
Okay, all right, you want to talk Nakato at 62 points or Dan Hounds at 87 points?
Welcome to the Rugby Rant podcast show, your premier North American rugby podcast, growing rugby one fan at a time.
And here we are, rugby fans, again, the Rugby Rant podcast show for episode 120. And you are here, of course, with myself, Ty Braga, Rob the Hammerschmidt, Mike the Grand Poobah Perazzini returning, and Scott the Big Guy Ferrara. This is the team from the Rugby Rant podcast show, here to be able to share with you all of the interesting stuff from around the pitch in a moment.
This ball represents the game we love. A game fueled by passion. But there are those who wear no number, nor are they in the locker room or the field of play. But they are there for every high and every low. Yes, they are watching every kick, tackle, and try scored. Yes, they are there for when you need them most, because they are the Major League Rugby fans. And the time has come for you to stand with your team. Join us at shopmlr.com today.
So, gentlemen, you know how this goes. For rugby fans out there who don't know, we're going to go quick fire round around the horn, so to speak. Actually, I can't say that, can I? Because that's the other show. I'm like, what is the phrase that I was looking for there? Anyway, that just popped into my head. We're going to go around the screen then. Oh, gosh, let me try that one again. So, gentlemen, you know how it goes, but it's best to remind everybody else how this goes. In Around the Pitch, we're going to highlight some important news from across rugby and all the rugby realms together, and we're going to share it in a quick fire round, starting off with Rob Hammerschmidt. What do you think fans should know?
Well, preseason training started this week. As of our taping on Monday nights, we saw a bunch of social media posts, both by teams and by players. Of course, the Iron Workers out of New York had a nice post. It looked like all the boys were bundled up and ready to train outside. You had the OGDC via Mike Dunleavy, an owner of OGDC, posting their indoor training sessions. And interestingly, the ones that went under the radar, if you're not paying attention, Michael Baska posted a picture from inside SeatGeek Stadium where the Hounds are going to be playing. I guess I could feel comfortable releasing that information, even though, he hasn't been officially announced as signing. He posted it on social media, so I'm going to go ahead and put it out there.
My friend.
Yeah. And then and Phil Eloff, sorry, JP Eloff, excuse me, not Phil, JP Eloff, also released that, he was out there in a Hounds drill jacket, dealing with actually 40-degree weather today. So it wasn't too bad here in Chicago, but it's good to see that preseason training is upon us and the season is right around the corner.
Right. Rugby is around the corner. It definitely is, as all the teams have assembled and getting ready for action. And that's not far away now. Mike, what have you got?
So I've got the National Collegiate All-Star Tournament is happening this weekend in Houston, Texas, January 14th to 15th. Rooney just announced that they are sending a team as well, actually two teams, the Tri-State Foundries Collegiate All-Star Program. It's going to be led by Tui Osborne, who's out of St. Bonaventure, who's led them last year to a national championship. He's now coached, I think, the Foundry twice. They also got coaches Austin Ryan from Fairfield U, Craig Wilson from Yale, Dave Chapman from Colgate, Rob Chuzik from UConn, and James Kimberly from Marist. So this is going to be, the best of the best for collegiate players all around the country playing against each other. So hopefully a bunch of future stars will be playing here, right, and hopefully we'll see them, in years to come in the MLR.
It's so fantastic that you highlight that, man. That is the next generation. And it's great for you to be able to create even more competition, opportunity to grow and play against even stiffer competition. That's really awesome. A thought popped in my head as I heard you introduce it when you mentioned Rooney. And I know that Scott obviously is certainly Rooney as well. Without saying so, for sure. How do you guys find going from Rooney to Rugby New York United, then now onto Ironworkers? Do you find that you're still stuck in that just as it rolls off the tongue, Rooney, Rooney,
It,
Rooney?
it just rolls off the tongue easier.
It's still
Yeah.
RNY, regardless
Yeah.
of what the
Yeah.
mascot
yeah.
is. So, it's
For-
still
I get you.
Yeah, for me, it's a little.
So am I
used.
incorrect if I say Rooney now? Because I got told off saying that's wrong now.
Who told you that?
Some stupid person online.
Exactly.
Yeah,
You know what we do.
It's fine. For me, it's capital R, little case U, capital N, capital
All right,
Y.
it's still there, but it's not
Yeah, it's
as
still there.
pronounced. I like it. I like it. Thank you very much. I had to ask because we've got two of the same on the show, so it was good to be time to be able to ask that. But that being said, let's move over to the second Rooney person here. Probably shouldn't say that. He was the first. I don't know. Scott, take it away.
Let's get hot, baby. So we're bidding fair winds and following seas to Women's Eagles player Christine Sommer, who is officially hanging up her international boots in a post from a couple days ago. She's Eagle number 264. She made her debut for the 15s Eagles in 2012. She was named to the 2017 World Cup squad. She was named to the 2021 World Cup squad. She also made her sevens debut for the Eagles in 2016. And, Seattle Saracens playing for her club. We're going to miss her. She's definitely left the jersey in a better place than when she got it. And she is one of my favorite female players. And it's sad to see when they hang up internationally. But listen, they had a great World Cup, and it's good to go out the way you want to go out. So again, congratulations on international retirement, Christine Sommer.
And excellent service to the career and a really great highlight. Thanks, Scott. It's great to be able to take a moment to be able to honor those great rugby players that filled that jersey, did their job for the next generation. And talking about the next generation, helping to mold that, talking about the women's side, we recently had news come out of the USA Rugby organization. Two new head coaches. Obviously, we saw Gary Gold exiting with his resignation after a disappointing run at the Rugby World Cup. Next up, we have Scott Lawrence, who has taken the helm for the moment at least. And he comes back with a rich rugby history from Rugby ATL. We know he's defensive coaching, going back to USA Rugby development. And it's been a natural fit. He was working in an assistant role there. On the women's side, we also have Richard Ashfield stepping up. So these are two new names helping American rugby grow, one, of course, in the men's side, one in the women's side. And on that note, on the men's side, Scott Lawrence has also been fortunate enough to find himself as the interim head of the high performance program recently, too. So he's having to wear many hats, which I'm sure he's comfortable with. We'll stay close and wish them well as they continue to be able to mold the next generation. And on that note, gentlemen, we have our Round the Pitch. We'll be back with more rugby, but in particular, we'll be back to talk more about the top matches in Major League Rugby 2023, as said so by the Rugby Rant. And that means nothing, but you still want to know. All that, we'll be back in a moment after we hear from one of our partners.
Tighthead Brewing Company is not just Chicago's premier location to watch rugby and enjoy quality ales and lagers. It is also a great place to enjoy local acts performing live music every Thursday and Saturday nights. Additionally, their Wednesday night trivia nights are something not to be missed. Tighthead is located in Mundelein, Illinois, and easily accessible for many Chicagoans, as it is just steps away from the metro. Owner Bruce Durr and the Tighthead staff are dedicated to ensure your microbrew experience is as tight as their beers. Bruce's love for rugby extends beyond the origin of his brewery's name. Tighthead is committed to supporting the rugby community. This includes his support for Lake County RFC and our own Rugby Rant podcast show. Tighthead's tap room is like the familiar rugby clubhouse in which friends and teammates can meet, socialize, and enjoy the wide variety of brews on tap. Regardless of whether your palate enjoys a good IPA or dark barrel-aged brew, Tighthead can deliver. Hey, Chicago, when you want rugby, Tighthead Brewing Company will satisfy your thirst. Tighthead, it's worth more than a try.
And welcome back, rugby fans. It's time for the Rugby Rant to do what we do best, and that's the opportunity to rant more about rugby in North America, but in particular, Major League Rugby is on our doorstep, and it's time to talk about the best matchups. And we have brought together, of course, the usual gang. And I say that because I don't know how many times this guy's been on the show already. I mean, if he's not on the payroll by now, we got to talk to finance. What's going on? The Grand Poobah, Perazzini, welcome back, my friend.
It's always a pleasure to be on.
Yeah, and man, a few words. I like it.
That's especially hard in this this crowd. So
Right.
I try to be spectacular in that way.
Yeah, you stand out because you don't say as much as us. But all jokes aside, it's great to be able to have you here. You're always great competition, wonderful insights. And what we're going to be talking about here, gentlemen, is for you guys just to tell our fans at home, what are the best matchups, in your opinion, they should be paying attention to over the course of the 2023 season? Now, there's a tremendous opportunity to be able to obviously highlight the Chicago Hounds. I'm sure that's going to come up as a new entry to the league, but we've also got great rivalries that are continuing year after year. Is that going to be on the lists, or is it going to be something completely different? And we're going to swing it around the table with each of them talking about one pick at a time that you should pay attention to. Mark it on your calendar. Scott, what do you think fans should pay attention to this season?
So people are going to call me a homer for my first pick.
Get out. Nobody would do that.
People don't know that you're from New York.
Shut the door. Stop the presses. No,
it's
way.
not. It's not just the fact that it's a Rooney match. To be honest, it could be a match from the week before. So maybe I'll select two matches for this pick, but it's the theory that the East Coast teams are going to be able to play in February. So week one, you have Chicago going to Old Glory, right? And that's February 18th. And then what I was talking about previously, my homer pick, was Toronto coming down to play Rooney at Memorial Field in Mount Vernon on Sunday, February 26th. For those of you who may be new to the MLR, in 2019, the first season Rooney played, their first 8 matches were all away. And then their next 8 matches were all home. 2020, that would look to be the way it was going to be. They had those 2 brief matches in Las Vegas as neutral field, and then they were going to start the home matches. And then finally in 2021, they kind of, 2 or 3 matches to get you into March and then start playing in New York. But everybody has been complaining about, people aren't going to show up to rugby in the snow and this, that, and the other thing. And I just have to tell you, watch the Buffalo Bills. They had 76 inches of snow and dug out so the team could be flown out to their game. It wasn't even a home game. The people of Buffalo banded together to dig out the roads so their football team could go to an away game that they were going to watch in television. So my point being, there are rugby fans who will travel to those games. I will be there. It will be the home and opener. I'm sure you'll see me and Mikey on the pre-match show, but I think this is going to be the big test this year to shirk the assumption that the East Coast teams can't start early.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting point when you say don't start early. And it's traditionally always been the criticism. It's too early. The snow is going to be on the ground. But when you see videos of guys assembling in camp for Rooney, I think it was last season or the season before, they were actually digging their own field out so they could practice. And it kind of personifies the spirit of the game, right? It doesn't matter. You want to play rugby, you're going to play rugby. And if you enjoy the sport, you're going to be there to be able to enjoy it. And it can also bring a wonderful atmosphere in its own way to the match. But I just love that story you said. Is that true? 76 inches of snow, and they had to I don't know, man. I've never even seen that much snow in my life.
Ask Mike, right? Mike, am I wrong about that?
They were digging out. I know for a fact they were sending out members of the staff to pick up players who are walking down the street to try to get to the practice field. Then they're calling up hey, so-and-so is on this street at this cross section. You'll see them walking. They were, showing up and, picking people up. So yeah, it was insane out west.
And in San Diego, if it hits 50, they don't leave the house.
Yeah, that's
right. So let's swing it over to you, Mike. What have you got to share?
So my first 2 are actually in week 5. So I'll go with the first one. My first match that I really want to watch is going to be Chicago versus Dallas. It's going to be, the two newbie teams. Chicago
Release
being
the
the
hounds.
newest team. Yeah, Dallas being
Right.
last year's new team. We didn't get to really see what Dallas had to offer last year, just as they were getting ready and like kind of ramping up. They had that freak accident on the walking bridge where they were doing the team building, and so they had to bring in guys from all over to kind of make up the team. And so it just never really, there was no cohesion. They were so close in so many respects. But I think this year they're going to start hitting the ground running. And then Chicago, nice expansion drafts, a lot of nice players that we know. I think it's going to be a nice, interesting game between the two. Is going to be able to show off these two new teams and show off that maybe new teams are viable.
A new team when most of them have played with each other for at least a year.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's a new team.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to derail you.
No, not at all.
More you wanted to add?
No, they are a new team. It's a new location, so
right?
We'll
it's a
see
new
what
location.
happens.
It's a new franchise. It's a new look. And here's the thing. I do like that one for a very good reason. I think, Rob, you also pointed it out there, release the hounds. It's like somebody's missing a marketing opportunity if that isn't called the dog fight, yeah.
I told you.
And then all you need is PETA and the ASPCA up our butts about calling it the dog fight.
Probably, right? So that's why I'm not doing their marketing. But I'm telling you, if somebody says that, then I'm claiming it. But it is an interesting one for new fans. I mean, you got an entirely new franchise. The Midwest is finally being represented in the highest form of the game here. So there's a lot of great anticipation. So I think on every list, there's probably going to be a Hounds match. And the opener is the most anticipated one. But against the Jackals, it's going to be interesting, right? I mean, the Jackals, you said, they've had a lot of hard luck, but they haven't even had a single successful game in terms of a win, right? A W. So that might give them the fire that they need.
So far, yeah.
Yeah,
I know it just seemed like this could be this season. Hopefully.
Right.
I don't know.
Right. And in the off season, they focus on restructuring. They brought in some really, really great leadership, coaching staff, players. So hopefully the cohesion will be there. Half of Argentina. I mean, then you've got South Africa down the road in Houston. So it's just kind of, you go with what works for your franchise. And naturally, if you bring in somebody at the top in the coaching or directorship level, you're going to see that influence underneath. And let's be honest, Argentinian rugby is pretty exciting. So let's see what the Jackals can do. And that's your pick on the first one, Mike. Thanks very much. Rob, the floor is yours.
Well, geez, with two Rooney guys in the house, two iron workers, as they're now known, I'm surprised nobody selected this one. So thanks for saving it for me. I had week 1, Seattle versus New York. And it's a rematch of last year's final, right?
Like
so who doesn't like to see a rematch of last year's final? Traditionally, don't we see in the NFL, don't they play in Canton a preseason game of the two previous teams that were in the Super Bowl? But this one has actual substance and meaning because it's, the first weekend of the MLR. And I'm interested to see how New York operates without Andy Ellis. He was clearly a leader on the pitch, somebody that they look to keep the ship steering in the right direction. They of course held on to a core. With
I'm not writing it off that he won't be lacing up later this season.
Scott will be sending boots to his house. Hey, Andy, try these out.
Already have.
Yeah. But, they still have Jason Emery back, and they have Benasso, and they have Fawcett, and they have, of course, Chango. But then it's going to be interesting to see how somebody like, Nick Feeks feeds in to the mix. So I'm interested in their continuity. And we haven't heard a lot about Seattle in terms of what they're bringing new to the table this season. They kind of snuck into the playoffs with, of course, the two the Gilly teams being out. So I'll be interested to see if they can still, hold their weight and carry the load as they initiate the 2023 season.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot because it's got history. And people love a story, and a story is kind of what sells the matchup there. You're right. I mean, I haven't heard a lot coming out of Seattle's camp, but for Rooney, they have always been consistent in revealing information in a timely manner. But I think this is going to be a pretty important year for them to be able to consolidate and hold the strength that they've had from last season. Seattle, as you say, kind of was catapulted ahead into that position, but they were on their way home. I mean, I remember players actually left and then were called back for those playoffs. So it's going to be an interesting one there. I like that pick. Let's go ahead on to Scott again for your second choice.
So this is the pick everybody wants me to talk about, and it's not actually my pick. They want me to talk about Week 13. They want to talk about how the Hammer and the Big Guy are going to be in Chicago for the Hounds versus the Ironworkers, right? But that's not what I'm going to talk about. What I am going to talk about is the match that might break the Hammerschmidt household and divide it. I'm talking Nola Gold at Chicago, father versus son, Nola versus the Hounds, Gold versus Chicago, the Big Hammer versus the Ball Peen Hammer. We're talking the first Chicago NOLA match ever. And if you guys don't know, Preston has switched allegiances to Chicago. Rob, obviously, sticking with his NOLA group. That's his prerogative. But I think you guys, this is going to be a house divided. This is going to be a screaming match. I don't know. It's kind of early. I'm going to assume Preston's still going to be at school, but I have a feeling they're going to be texting during this match, a match that I'm sure Rob's going to be at. So, guys, look for Rob in the crowd. I'm sure he'll be stacked with his NOLA gear. Look for Preston, the Little Hammer, Hammerschmidt on social media, on our Facebook pages, on the MLR Fan Zone page, talking about it. I'm telling you, this could be a house divided match. Preston's graduating this year. Yeah. I don't know if he'll be invited back.
I think there's got to be I think there needs to be a friendly wager on this too, and the punishment aired on the show, and we'll figure it out between you two. But that's a fun one. That's a really
the friendly wager is if the Gold wins, he pays for his tuition. If they lose, I still pay for
wow. Throwing the gauntlet down.
But yeah, that's going to be the Hammerschmidt Cup, and I'm still thinking about bringing out. I haven't ruled out making some kind of presentation trophy.
There has to be a trophy,
right?
Yeah, there has to be.
I like that one a lot. That's going to be good fun, and again, held in good spirit, and that's what rugby
Big
is.
Slice
creates
of gold
the
deep dish.
That's what we'll be taking recommendations below. Make sure that you tag us. Let's hand it over to Mike again. What have you got for your second choice that fans should know about?
Second choice, another Week 5 matchup. Going with the homer, Rugby New York versus New England Free Jacks. I think, it's going to be a Rugby Rooney home match. Rooney, very tough. I don't think they have won a home game against New England at all. So maybe we could turn this ship around. We lost a close one, I think, last year. It was like a last second, kick in. Maybe it wasn't a kick in a ruck. It was definitely a kick in a ruck. That was definitely illegal. But. And I'm still
bitching about that.
Still pissed about it.
He's still bitching about that.
But still, it's early on in the season. I think it's going to be. It could be a defining point for both teams moving forward. It could really set the tempo for Rugby New York going into the season post championship. New England might play spoiler. They've lost some assets. With Bowden Waka going over to Japan. But they still are a tough team to play. So I think it's going to be, down and dirty, kind of old school rugby match that we kind of all have come to know and love. And so I'm really looking forward to, Rugby New York versus New England.
It's interesting that
March 19th.
Yeah, it's interesting that you pick Week 5 matches because traditionally, if you look over the seasons gone by, teams have an opportunity to be able to cement their place in their conference by game 5 to game 8. And we've seen that in previous years that once you kind of get yourself into the top 2, by then you've got the momentum, you've got consistency. There's very seldom been changes. So, those opening exchanges up to there are very important, but you could argue that 5 to 8 game stretch is even more important, depending whether it's home or away for you. So it's good choices there. Good choices. I like it a lot. And by the way, I wanted to make sure that everybody knows as we're talking about these matchups, we're not offering any predictions. We'll leave that to the Super Brew contest. So if you're not in there yet, which you should be getting an opportunity to be able to do so as we lead ever closer to the start of the season, you'll be getting information. Rob is always one who you can reach out to directly. Likewise for Scott and myself. We will all individually, as far as I know, we haven't had the meeting. The meeting's right now, but what we did last time is we individually had our own choices, and then we had one for the Rugby Rant. I don't know if you gentlemen noticed, but the last time around, we individually sucked, but collectively we did okay.
Well, speak for yourself.
10.
Yeah, speak for your guys.
10, right?
Yeah, I think But Scott was in the top 10. I think I was in the top 4. So
Who won again? Was it our buddy Jason?
Jason won. Yeah, Jay won.
Jason.
Yeah. Okay. I stand corrected. Well, then apparently I just need to get better. But again, pay attention to it online, guys, and it's going to be good fun. It's absolutely no charge. It's really just an opportunity to be able to stay engaged with a growing rugby community, and it's as simple as picking your favorite one, who you think is going to win, and that with the score difference. I think it's a difference, right? Not the actual score difference. Yeah.
It's a difference.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, Rob, I didn't want to derail you there, but I wanted to make sure that we gave it the highlight that it deserved. So back to you, my friend.
Oh, no, thank you. It's a perfect plug. I appreciate it. I'm going to go for my second one. If I didn't put NOLA in one of these, I would be doing the whole gold digger community down there in New Orleans a disservice. And initially I was thinking, round one, the first meeting, the opener between NOLA and the Free Jacks, but I began to think about it a little bit more. And I actually believe the more important match that I absolutely need to tune into is May 21st, round 14, NOLA versus the Free Jacks in New England. And the reason is number one, obviously the Free Jacks were the class of the league in the regular season last year. Obviously Rooney pulled one out against them in the semifinal, but they were the class of the league, and they really did a great job last year. But of course, as Mike mentioned, they lost Bowden Waka. They've lost a few other guys to international, going back overseas. And so it'll be interesting to see how they fare. But more importantly, with the influx of overseas talent coming into NOLA, I'm really interested to see how they fare, especially away in week 14 when you're starting to close out the season and the playoff picture will really start to take shape. It's going to be really critical, a match for New Orleans to see how they fare in a hostile environment. And we know Phil presents a hostile environment, and every time he can, he gives the big guy a low blow, and we know he'll do it to the NOLA fans. But it'll be interesting to see how NOLA responds in this one. They lost in week 8 last year by a mere 4 points. So let's see if they can turn this one into victory, especially as they begin to head into the playoffs.
And that's one of the important things for NOLA is that, when it comes down to those final moments of the match, it really separates some of their opportunities in the past from being successful and not successful. And especially that deep into the season where depth is going to be an issue. You go to the risk of injury, but experience has an opportunity to shine in opportunities like that. So that's a really good pick. And I'm surprised you picked one so late in the season, but I understand the reasoning for it because those are the critical moments as you lead into the postseason matchups. So yeah, good highlight.
And the two Eastern Conference teams, right? So it's going to matters on the Eastern Conference point table.
Yeah, absolutely. Fair point. I like it very much so. And your final pick, Scott, what do you got?
All right, so you guys are going to have to just understand my concept here. I'm going to go through week 18. You have Toronto versus NOLA, right? Old Glory versus ATL. Dallas versus Chicago. San Diego versus Seattle. And then you have these two outliers, New England versus Houston and New York versus Utah. I'm taking all of week 18 except for New England versus Houston and New York versus Utah, and hear me out. Because the schedulers are stupid. Whoever decided the schedule was stupid. Why would you select East Coast match, West Coast match, West Coast match, and then split the other 4 teams up between Eastern versus Western Coast match in the last week? We've had 2 years in a row where the last week meant who the heck was going in the playoffs, and you take a matchup where last year, right, Rooney in New England played their 3 matches regular season plus the semifinal, right? Splitting 2 and 2, right? That last match in New England, even Rooney won, but they didn't win by enough to jump that first seed, right? So why? So my point being is Toronto Nola is going to decide something. Chicago Dallas is going to decide something. Old Glory Atlanta is going to decide something, and San Diego Seattle is going to decide something. And while the other 2 matches will decide something, it won't be this decisive fun thing because they should have done East versus East, West versus West. They have 12
and
teams.
it sets up really high fan engagement because you want to watch the games because it has an impact on other things and it keeps people engaged.
Exactly. So I'm saying I'm taking those East versus East and those West versus West in the last week of the season because that shit's going to decide something. It's going to be spectacular.
So what do you have for your 17th pick?
I'm joking.
So all jokes aside, I mean, I get the logic and setting up that, the excitement and the anticipation culminating in that last ditch effort to be able to make the postseasons. Good stuff. Or the playoffs. So let's hand it over to Mike.
Well, Scott just took, the wind out of my goddamn sails right there. My pick was Week 18, San Diego versus Seattle.
Just to clarify, but you picked one game per the rules.
I picked one game. I was told
Listen, first of all, my premise was way more engaging than your stupid one match you guys picked.
But I picked this one match. It's the last match of the regular season. It's between 2 fierce rivals in San Diego and Seattle. They've always been neck and neck, no matter what. This game kind of no matter what is going to be like a bloodbath, even if, one of the teams is, on the cusp of making it in, or there's something on the line for one of them and one of them's not going to be on it. The other team's going to be, playing spoiler just because they don't like each other with the history involved. So this game I think it's going to be one to watch no matter where the 2 teams are placed in the standings, but odds are they're going to be very close.
In addition to that, with San Diego, some other highlights in general as we move outside of that, it's just going to be really awesome to be able to see professional rugby played at Snapdragon Stadium. We had SoFi last year, it was a one thing. We had the Coliseum, and we never had anybody step up to that caliber until the Snapdragon here. So it's going to be great to be able to see that. SeatGeek on the other side as well, another great addition to the rugby landscape. So there's not only these things to be excited about in terms of matchups, the grud matches, the rivalries, and all that stuff that makes rugby so great in America because we know how to be able to embrace the story behind it. The narrative is so great. But there's a couple of other milestones in between. So as fans, there's a lot to look forward to, but the next thing to look forward to will be shared with you by Rob.
Yeah, so I'm looking at week 3, March 26th, and I don't know that we're going to see a playoff picture emerge at all. What I'm looking for is it's when the Chicago Hounds play Seattle. One of the reasons why I'm looking forward to this matchup, it doesn't have as much to do with it being Chicago being represented here. It has more to do with the fact that a lot of people have talked about Chicago's roster, of course, with somebody like Billy Meeks joining and Luke Carty and Luke White and having a very strong roster, Michael Duvall, and a lot of guys from those 2 very successful teams from last year prior to disqualification.
The names we shall not mention anymore, apparently.
Yeah. Like a bad Harry Potter. So, but nevertheless, I'm looking forward to this because this is going to be the test of whether indeed that's going to play out. Like you have Seattle as last year's representative in the Western Conference playing a new Western Conference team, and can the Hounds hang with the Western Conference champions from last year? And then play this out even further. They play again in round 14 on May 20th in Tukwila. And again, I want to see if the Hounds could sustain that pressure of playing away in what is probably the most hostile environment in the league, just because it's a smaller, more quaint venue and the fans are right on top. And those fans love their rugby. And we know that they give as much as they enjoy it. So it will be interesting to see the Hounds play, Seattle both home and away.
Right, they're important barometers in the success of a
Right.
franchise early. And obviously, they'll be tested in many different areas, but really the biggest test is their performance away. Yes, they don't have a home culture, so you could say that to a certain degree as well. But I tell you what, it's a lot easier to play a game on a ground that you're familiar with, regardless whether the fans are there with you or not, than it is to be able to go to, as you say, one of the most hostile stadiums. And by that, we mean in terms of the energy, the atmosphere, which is palpable, it's electric, and we know it's exciting because of that. And the energy inside that can change and have an influence on the game.
Yeah.
And yeah, so those are also really excellent picks. So perhaps you, as a rugby fan tuning in to the Rugby Rant, also have your pick of what you think should be a match that everybody should watch, and of course, tell us what that might be under the handle at Rugby Rant Pod. You can tag us either on any of our social media posts, and perhaps this one, episode 120, and tell us if you think that one of the great matches, in your opinion, was missed by us here, and tell us when it is and why we should pay attention to it.
Listen, I'll tell you one we did miss. You have to look at Toronto playing their first home game all the way in week 8. They have a away match, a bye, 4 more away matches, and then they.
Unfortunately, that's kind of par for the. Yeah, I mean, they've been stiffed like that a few seasons in a row.
Exactly. Well, I'm hoping that changes when we can prove the concept that the East Coast, and I understand Toronto's a little farther north than Mount Vernon, New York, but I think we could prove the concept that Toronto can play those games. The schedulers got to get out the friggin' almanac, get an actuarial table to show the percentages. Let's get some goddamn early home games for our fans up north.
I think that's a pretty important point, though. I mean, look, it could just be fluke that it ends up being a really awesome day. It could end up swinging being a terrible day. But as long as the rugby product is entertaining and it's a translatable brand, it will be important. And those two sides have always delivered. They've been a great rivalry, and we hope to be able to see that continue growing season by season. But, you know, if that be later that it is ending up being an early match between those two, and there's a tradition to form, I want to call that the Cold War. All right, so let's leave it there, gentlemen. But again, it's been a blast being talking about the top 3 picks from Mike, Rob, and the top 17 from Scott. Of course, this show is all about the good times, the good rugby banter, and we invite you to be able to do that with us online under the handle at Rugby Rant Pod. Perhaps at one point you may even want to challenge one of these boys on screen. We welcome that because, of course, that's a part of what we do here, helping rugby grow one fan at a time. And a big thank you to Mike, the Grand Poobah Perazzini, for throwing in his 2 cents of the conversation here. Always a pleasure to have you, my friend. And again, it's a bit of a tradition. You know that we offer an opportunity for you to send a shout out to any particular rugby club, rugby fans. And we've heard it before, but who is it this time?
I was going to say, I would always give out, Albany Bootleggers and, Old Breed Rugby. Those are my 2 clubs. I've actually I got the book last year, but I don't read very much because I'm a rugby player and reading is hard. But I've been reading This is Rugby by Adam Hughes, the Bootleggers. We are in here. He did a great write-up. So, shout out to Adam. He did a great job. I'm loving reading the book. So, congrats to him. And,
be honest, you read just that part so far.
Yeah. It's just like, yeah. It's almost interest. Like 3 pages. Yeah. It's a nice little blurb. It's just perfect for me to
took him about 4 months
over again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I picked up the same book and frankly did the same thing. I skipped right forward to the Midwest and I started reading and went, okay, wait a minute. This guy, I love the book, love the history, love all that bit, but like my home club was one of 3 clubs to have its own facilities, own pitch, and everything else, and it doesn't even get a mention. Nor does our friend David Fee get a mention either. And for that, he'll need to have to write a follow-up.
It's because you're not special. You're just like everyone else that has
somebody call the ambulance.
You're not special.
Oh, on that note, I think I want to leave that as Mike's last word. You are not special, Rob. And for that, he takes the win again.
Oh, no.
Don't worry, the points count for nothing. It's all about the bragging rights, and it's yours this time around, Mike.
I'll take
Enjoy
it. I'll
it.
take. That's what very, very rarely happens. I'm going to take it.
All right. We appreciate it. Again, we appreciate you and all of your support and the things that you do for rugby as well and joining us here on the show. You're always welcome back. But to our fans at home, most of all, thank you for continuing to help us do what we do each and every week here on the Rugby Rant podcast show. And it is so crucial to be able to share rugby in a fun and interesting way as we do week after week. We've come to be able to meet a lot of great rugby fans along the way, a lot of people we now call friends through our greater rugby community. And we invite you to be a part of that by following us online under the handle at Rugby Rant Pod. And we welcome you to change anybody here on screen for your own time here on the Rugby Rant podcast show. And until that day, we'll see you at the next.